hours like I do, or can you kind of go whatever?
No, like it probably about I think it's an hour. Yeah, about an
Okay.
hour. Yeah, so you
Yeah,
can
going
hear
an,
you.
going an hour fine, but
Okay, yeah, cool. So you can hear
yeah,
me.
most
You
yeah,
can hear me okay and all that.
I can hear you just fine. As
Cool.
long as you can hear me, I guess we're good to go.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a pretty cool thing. So yeah, we're pretty much live now. So that means while we're talking, other people
Mm-hmm.
can like just listen in and hear and things like that, and we're basically on. Yeah, we're on.
Oh, that's really great. So you actually see me in a little corner there in the video then. Is that what you're
Um,
saying?
yeah. Well, you're on the other page. So if I flip over,
Right.
then I can see you. But for now, it's like they're showing my image, where I can hear
Uh-huh.
you. But and I think in the perspective of the audience, they can see both of us.
Oh, isn't that neat? Okay. Boy, 21st century technology, I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah, it's stripped out. Yeah, it kind of it's like out there. Yeah, probably 20 years from now, everyone's gonna be talking like this. It's like
Yeah,
no more
probably
need.
right.
Yeah, just be
Yep.
visual phones and all that. And I think they do that through Facebook too. So it's like it's on there too. So
Yeah.
it's like on both ends. So it's kind of interesting like that. Yeah.
Well, the rumor that I hear is that now they're trying to do away with landlines.
Yeah.
And they're like going to start jacking up the cost of landlines, and that concerns me because I know that we have bad weather, especially in Maine. We get some really hefty winters, and I deliberately went to the Salvation Army and purchased a phone that has a cord on it, okay, to plug in here, just so if we lost power, that I would still be able to call somebody if I needed to. And it's a good thing I did because we actually had neighbors that got burned out, and because it's all the buildings are attached, when people had to evacuate, we had to evacuate, even though we're not in the same building, but we're connected. And so I had to call my husband to tell him to hurry home. And if I would have just had the cordless and not that phone, they shut off the power right when I was picking up the phone, and I wouldn't have been able to call him to let him know what was going on if I didn't have that phone. So, and we do lose power because of the weather sometimes. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you heard about the ice storm that happened in 90, it's like 97 or 98. And I moved up here the year after, and to this day, I still hear stories about that. People were without power for 3 weeks in some parts of Maine, and it was just a big mess. So I'm thinking if they do away with landlines, what if you have a cell tower that stops working because of the weather? You know what I mean? How do you get a hold of anybody? So that's very concerning for me on a personal level.
Yeah, I think a lot of the storms coming in with a lot of the modification of the weather devices, because a lot of the frequencies that go on with HARP that kind of like affects the weather. So while the weather
Yeah,
is getting all like basically energized by a lot of high frequencies, that
yeah,
pushes a lot of like the cold front that you get from the north and southern hemispheres into areas where it's not supposed to go. And so like say if Maine's like naturally like usually cold, it would just make
yeah,
it colder. It would make it more chemicaled ice than just the natural ice you guys were like used to dealing with. And like even on the south, like in the southern hemisphere, it's really hot. But
yeah,
because of the way the weather modifications are ruined, it just makes it that much hotter. We even had to deal with hurricanes. They had like some really demonic images from like the meteorological reports. It was like some weird stuff on there. It was weird. It was like because like Hurricane Andy or Sandy or any of the names they have for it was like some of the several ones that we had. They had these
yeah.
weird faces on them. It was kind of like, what kind of weather is this, And they hit this, I think, the coast by Myrtle Beach, and there was a few people there that got hit really hard by that. And yeah, it was pretty bad, real bad.
That's scary. And it's interesting because, I mean, I grew up in, the Cleveland, Ohio area, so we get that lake effect there from Lake Erie. And so we do get snow there, but I wasn't right on the snow belt. If you go to the east side of Cleveland and the Cleveland suburbs on that side, then you're getting more snow where you're going to get bigger, snow piles when they get done plowing and everything, and it does get bigger. But even that is probably not as much as what you get up here. And I've been here for 18 years now, and I have to say I'm used to having a high amount of snow. I mean, it gets to the point where now there have been a couple of winters this year and probably about 7 or 8 years ago where they finished plowing and the piles of snow were so high on either side of the streets that I'd ride through, like, stay on the city bus, and you could tell there was a lot of snow, but then I'd be in a car where I was lower and I felt like I was going through a hamster trail. I mean, it was just that high up. So, but see, for here, that's normal. We just don't think about. But this year I think was a little more extreme than usual, So, but I'm at the point. I mean, it's like I'm used to it. I'm desensitized to it. I guess you could say. When the first year I saw a lot of snow, I think I laughed because in the middle of May we had a big snow pile in our yard that was still melting. And I thought it was hilarious, and I just laughed about it because I couldn't believe that in May we still have that much snow, So to me, it's been more of an adventure, I guess you could say, because I didn't grow up with that, but at least not nearly that much, But I mean, I'm at the point now where it's like I don't know if it's because I'm getting older. I mean, I just turned 49, so I don't I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or if it's because after 18 years it's not an adventure anymore. I'm at the point where it's like I'm done with all the massive amounts of 30 below weather and then the high snow, and for some reason I just feel like I'm ready to move on and just get someplace where it's better weather. But that's just me. That's just a personal note. But anyway, but I see what you're saying. I've heard stories about, was it in Georgia, where they're saying that the weather's getting so hot that it's actually getting dangerous, where there are people that are actually, there's like higher rates of people having strokes because of these, heat pockets that are in different parts of the world. And Georgia is a classic example of these heat pockets that are taking place. And it's just really, it's very scary because I know a family down there, and the grandfather was in the hospital from a stroke because the heat was so intense. And if you don't have air conditioning, then basically your life is on the line.
Yeah, because of the fact that, if you don't, the heat index is so high that it would really just cause heat strokes, and then it really just causes people to pass out, especially for the elderly. That because our vet actually she's about 70. She passed out on the way over, I think it was about a month ago. Yeah, because from the heat, and the heat was really intense. And this was a month ago, so we're not even supposed to be hot. But in the southern hemisphere, it was real hot during times when it was supposed to be mildly cold. And then in the summers, it's like an oven. It's like extremely oven. Also, I wanted to tell you that I'm getting a lot of questions here. I don't know if you can see it or not. Some people can see you, and some people can't. But it doesn't matter because once it's finished and it's posted, it should show both sides. But there's a lot of questions we got here. So since I'm seeing them, I wanted to know if you wanted to address any of them. So a lot of people think this is really cool. That it's my first live feed on Facebook. Actually, this is the first time I've done this. You're the first one for this, so this is pretty interesting. So so one person had this thing about flat Earth or something like that. Someone named Dion Heyman wanted to know a little bit about that, and all I could tell you on that is that I usually leave people to decide for themselves on it, but my stance is it's not flat, and I've been around the world, and I'm just letting you know that from experience. I'm not speaking that from somebody who stayed in America and traveled coast to coast and then assessed my opinion that it's flat that way. You're speaking to someone who's been to the northern hemisphere. I've been to Alaska. I've been down south, so all I can tell you is it's round. Okay, it's you can analyze that with Navy admirals. You can study up with them. They've been around the world too. They traveled the USS Enterprise and the USS Virginia all the way around recently. You can go check that with them. It's a fact. I don't know what this flat Earth crap is all about. I don't really care about it. I don't want to talk about it, and that's all I got to say about it.
Well, just history has a way of repeating itself. And I know that, I believe it was Isaac Newton that had realized from reading the Bible that the earth was round and not flat. And I don't remember if there was somebody else too, but I know he was definitely a part in it. And it used to be, remember the Catholic Church ran the known world at that time. And what they said, it was just you either accepted that as fact or you were an outcast. And so they were the ones that were saying that the earth was flat. And so Isaac Newton and other people were challenging them on that and saying, no, according to the Bible, it's round. And so, basically they make anybody out to look stupid who try to question or challenge their authority, with what they had to share with people. And so, to make a long story short, eventually everybody knew, okay, the world is round. Well, now, where we are now, because now that you see that the Catholic Church has so much control over the world governments behind the scenes, okay, that there's a propaganda that goes with it. So they're kind of trying to bring that flat earth back into it again is really what's happening. And what it's really interesting because they try to say, you know, well, what about this? And they'll give you this whole list of factors of all these different things. But like I was even talking to my husband about it. He said, you know, he's been on top of what is it in the White Mountains there in New Hampshire? Is it Mount Washington?
Okay.
He's been up there like when he was like I think he was still a kid or something or like high school or something.
Yeah.
And he says you can go to the top of there. That's the highest mountain in New England. He says you look over in the far distance and you look at the horizon. It has a curvature to it. You know, looking on the left side and the right side, it curves, you know, down on both sides. He said, if the world is flat, you wouldn't see that. And I said, exactly. You go to any high place, and you're going to see where, over the distance, it rounds off. I mean, all you have to do is just look, you know. So it's amazing how people will believe something just because the propaganda is out there. So, I mean, it really is a Jesuit thing where they're trying to, you know, convince people of that to, you know, kind of lead them back into spiritual darkness again.
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, I just saw all these like channels on some of this stuff, and a lot of their doctrine is very refutable. You know, they're just taking verses out of context, is what they're
Yeah.
doing. You know, and it's just a classic move that I've even seen denominational churches do. Like the Catholics do it all the time. You know, in fact, they're quite rich from doing it all the time. So it's like the Bible talks about certain persons who can accept doctrine because their ears want to hear it. People like to hear certain things that they like to hear. Even when you tell them easy ears, you got it. You know, when you tell them certain truths, it's really hard for them to accept because sometimes truth can hurt. You know, truth can sometimes be, you know, it can really just, you know, knock you for a loop. A lot of people don't like dealing with that, you know, and this is like the most easiest truth I could possibly know about. And I believe you're right on a lot of what you said in regards to that because that's been going on a long time in terms of propaganda, watering down information, watering it all down so that you never get logistics on navigation, longitude and latitude. You never understand what that means, so you can't even find countries because people are so transfixed on the wrong thing. You know, it's like I really feel like it's a doctrine to make people stay at home and just not learn anything. It's sort of like they can accept that, which is such a ridiculous thing, and not actually travel around the world to really verify if that's true, and which is not really expensive to do anymore. You know, I mean, there's ways you can do that. You know, you could take trip to trip and then be right back at the city you started in. You can do it that way. Then you can find out for yourself. Like millions of people in airplanes find out every day. You know, it's like, you know, just travel. Get on a plane and travel and find out. You know, it's quite simple and it's quite sad. And especially, you know, salvation really doesn't depend on that. It really doesn't depend on, okay, where am I leaning toward? You know, it depends on the way. It depends on your repentance, your change in God, your change in your life. It depends on that. Depends on, you know, rather if you really are a Christian or not. It does not depend on shapes and sizes. It depends on your repentance, your life, how you have committed yourself to God. That's what it depends on. You know, I think a lot of people fail really in understanding that, where some people do. I know in this live cast, I'm dealing with the church now. Nobody here fails at that. I think everyone here is a Christian. Everyone here understands, you know, in things of the, you know, things of that sort, you know. So it's just a world out there with, you know, when you got these various YouTube channels and stuff, it becomes very very sad about what's going on with people being deceived like that, you know, and I think that's really horrible that any teacher is going to go and make people stupid. You know, I think that's a horrible thing to do to somebody. It's an irresponsibility on that teacher's part too. I think that the teachers who are teaching that need to spend some time out in the field, you know, because it doesn't seem like they are. It just seems like they learn some verse and they're like, ooh, I got a cool thing. Maybe I can make ad money. And then bam, here they come. You know, it's like, you know, that's not how we're taught. That's not how I was trained. That's not what we do, you know.
Well, it's like it's no longer about education. It's more about social conditioning.
Yeah. Yeah. It really does seem that way. Yeah.
And I know one of the claims that they make to supposedly support the flat earth theory is that, you know, they say, well, when you fly in a plane, they don't go directly to certain points on the globe. They have to go all the way around to go around. And I'm thinking, you know, it could very well be. I don't know this for a fact. I'm one of these deep thinkers, so I think about, well, what if a lot. And sometimes I find out I'm right and sometimes I don't. But what I'm wondering is there supposedly somebody in, was it the 1800s, or it might have been General Byrd, I'm not sure, but I remember watching a documentary where somebody was somewhere in Antarctica, and they came across this shield where they just boop, and they couldn't go any further. And I don't know why that shield is there.
No.
I don't know if it's like invisible. It's transparent. It's just all of a sudden you just can't go any further, like it's this bubble or something. So they're trying to claim, well, we got this bubble over this flat Earth, it's our protection. And I'm thinking, well, we don't know what that is. If you really did run into something like this, could it be? I mean, like I said, I'm just thinking of different ideas here, but is there a possibility that maybe this is something that God might have put there for our protection? Because I know there's one part in the Bible where it talks about the abyss, and where and you read the martyrdom of Bartholomew, which is one of the extra biblical texts, where it talks about where he sent the demon in India to he sent him and commanded him in the name of Jesus to go where no man has ever gone, like go on the earth where no man has ever gone. And he went, and the demon went crying and screaming because he knew that, pretty much that was the end for him. He was stuck there until Judgment Day. So, so I'm wondering, I don't know this for sure, but could it be, if that does exist, like, Byrd claimed it did, then could it be maybe that is God protecting us from that? Maybe that's where on the globe it is, and maybe that's why the planes can't fly to a certain point, because maybe they know there's something there that they can't fly. I don't know. Like I said, my mind's wandering. I'm just thinking of what ifs, and but if it turned out I was right, that'd be mind blowing.
There's two theories on it. One is believed that there is a vertical hemisphere there, where enough anti-gravity builds up, which then causes a magnetic reaction, and that's your force field. And right, because the magnetic field becomes so high that it can literally it can act like a wall, because you just run right into it. And it's believed that there's forces, G-forces, that go on at the North and the South Pole, like openings, vortexes that opens up. Now that's a theory. There are a lot of people believe there's a hollow, there's a lot of people believe there is a hollow existence to the earth. Like in the book of Amos, it shows that there is this deep abyss, this world that exists underneath our world, and it has sudden reactions with volcanic science. And volcanic science usually always ends up by the poles, or it starts with what we call the fault lines. It's all underneath the earth, basically, under the oceans and everything else. And these two hemispheres, build up a lot of magnetic energy, and then, sometimes it comes out with the aurora and the aurora lights and all that. That's like the plasma field kind of reflecting out of the gravity, or bouncing off our gravity shield, and
so it's all tied in with that.
Yeah, there's paranormal phenomenon all connected with that, and it seems that sometimes pilots run into it. And sometimes they have navigation problems because of it. Some pilots have been known to disappear, like just vanish, because they get pulled into some other place. Because it seems like, from the theories of it, that when the Ecclesiastics talks about space and time, it talks about it as being circuits that run through the atmosphere, that run through the air. And it seems that these circuits have starting points within our hemisphere, because that's where the orbit spins, where our planet spins, Earth, Mars, all the planets spin from these access points. And these access points seem to have dimensional openings. That's as far as I can really describe that there seems to be this angelic order that is operating within it, and it seems to affect the gravity field within those areas. So sometimes, people run into like a force field. Then there's this other aspect where it comes from hidden technology, where a lot of people believe there's things that you find that could be turned on or been left on, or something happened to it, something caused it to come on, that could be causing another problem, and that's usually like a rare case. And so, but usually the primary cases are just a lot of the atmospheric forces that happen there, which is very well documented. Like, people can check that out.
And I wonder if that would tie in with part of my theory, where maybe God has that as a shield to protect us. Because if He doesn't want us going past that point, is there a reason for it?
Of course, we're not meant for that. We're at the stages we're at. Mankind tries to find ways to defy that, and our shadow government very much loves doing that. Like they love jumping into that. Like, hey, how do we jump into a volcano? Don't worry, I'm going to figure it out in 6 months, and we're getting in one way or another. And they do, they do it. Like, and if it sacrifices 3 or 4 lives, it's horrible that they think that way, and that's because they're military. I mean, they're simplify. Yeah, that's what they do. So then they go ahead and do it. But normal, when I talk about people who don't have this type of training and they get adventurous and they're like, let's do it, it's not a good idea. It's just not a good idea. We're not, right, don't try this at home, exactly. Just stay home, enjoy the trees, enjoy the river, enjoy domestic animals, the simple pleasures in life. You don't need to travel into hell and see what it looks like. I mean, it's pretty good job. Yeah, it's pretty out there when people think to do that. And I've had people want to take me over to Antarctica, because they're like, well, you can pinpoint it and everything. I'm like, do you think I really want to go over there, knowing what's going on there? Like, what are you thinking about? Like, what are you going to do when you get there? Hi, I'm here. Well, okay, fine, you're dead now because you've seen too much. And it's about. Yeah, exactly. So it's about not poking the wrong bear. It's about understanding the parameters of what you can and cannot do. I mean, the Bible says to expose, to learn, to educate. If you're doing it for that reason, that's cool. But some people do it for some really weird reasons that don't have anything to do with God, really.
And even then, you better know what you're doing, even if it's for the right reasons, because, you may not make it back.
Yeah, we got 2 questions on that, too. I got one from Dion that says, if there is a secret space program that would clearly contradict the theory of a flat Earth, and I have another question that says, is there a Nazi empire beneath the ice in Antarctica? So all I can say with the space program is that there are people that tell the truth on that, and then there are people that don't. If there's somebody from space telling you the Earth is flat, I would have to consider that to be disinformation. Usually the Bible says to clarify things with 2 or 3 witnesses in accordance to what you hear. So therefore, if someone's telling me that they've been in space, I'm going to correlate what they've said to me by other witnesses to that fact, which can verify that testimony. So I hope that answers that question for Dion. And for Bogin, I could say that there is a shadow government in Antarctica. It's no longer controlled by the Nazis because they lost the open war. It's now controlled by parameters within the globalist government, and you might want to talk to the Bilderbergers about what goes on in Antarctica. And that's what I got so far.
Interesting. So they wouldn't be part of that then? The Germans wouldn't be part of that then?
No, not direct, not like they were before. I mean, they have a globalist piece in it. Of course, they have their agenda in it, but that agenda got wrapped up with Operation Paperclip. So whatever's going on with them, it correlates with our shadow government.
Okay, that's interesting. And I didn't watch the video yet, but I saw something on the internet that was titled something to the effect of there are like other continents down there that we don't even know about. So it's not just one big Antarctica. There's like several separate continents supposedly. Yeah,
you talking about Antarctica?
Yes.
Yeah, Antarctica was supposed to be the southern tip of Atlantis, like years ago. Like the ruins in Antarctica come from before the flood, and so there's.
What I wondered if it was.
Yeah, it was years, like that's like maybe 7,000 years ago. So that's a long time ago. So that had a long time to also settle with the ice. So that's why everything is like so underneath the ice. And like here's another question I got from Paul. Have you seen the latest info on the NASA mission to Mars? Their admission that they can't get through the Van Allen radiation belts and have to figure out to get there. Well, the thing with that whole entire radiation belt and thing like that is that's information that came from NASA. And NASA's also the same people that told you that there's no atmosphere on any of the planets when you got leaked photos of creatures walking around there. So that contradicts radiation belts, and that contradicts the fact that if they can land a rover on Mars, I'm very sure they can land anything else on Mars. And if this tiny rover had the ability to overcome the radiation belts, that's kind of telling you there is no radiation belts. It's telling, right, it's a minimum gravity shield. It's similar to Earth. It does have a radiation shield, but it's not that fierce. If you can land small machines on the planet knowingly and publicly, that's telling you something. Also, these small machines, when they roll around and take pictures, don't seem to be affected by high winds, high heat, things of this sort. They're usually clear, bright days that seem to have wind blowing in a gust, usually maybe about 30 miles per hour, maybe less. That's like Earth-like. So, yeah, there's a lot of lies NASA tells.
And it makes me wonder from a biblical perspective, what was God's purpose of creating those other planets if he did not put us there to begin with? You know what I'm saying? Was it only Earth where he put us? And why wouldn't he put, if they're livable, why didn't he put other people there? I guess is why. So from a biblical perspective, why did he do it that way?
Okay, I got two questions. Okay, let me answer Paul's question real quick. Why has no one gone back? The thing is, there are people always going through these planets. There's another side to that argument. So that there's a side where people are going in and back from these planets, where other people are saying no one's coming back. So that's all going to be on what you believe. There is testimony that verifies that people have been going to the moon in covert means and other planets through covert means. What was your question now? The question about the planets again.
Well, no, what I was trying to say is, why is it that, when he created all the planets, why didn't he put people there to begin with? I understand people traveled there later, but why didn't he put people there to begin with? And I'm trying to figure out what is the biblical thing with that.
Okay, well, Genesis tells us that the universe, when it was created, and then when the earth was created, that all of this was the spectrum of God's gifts to mankind described in Psalm. So the planets and everything else was to be operated by the angelic order, then that's revealed in Job. So when these planets were formed, its original persons who stepped on it would have been angels. And in that respects, it was their responsibility to basically govern the fields of space. They were going to be the teachers to humanity at certain points in accordance to God's will. When Adam and Eve were created, they were created in Eden. And Eden was described as a dimensional world. It was like a bridge between a higher world and then Earth. So sometime in Eden, mankind, through Adam and Eve, they learned about these things, or the parameters of the universe. When they came out, because they fell, they didn't really reach that pinnacle of whatever knowledge they were supposed to have pertaining to the planets. So when they had to come to Earth, they had to learn about their fall and their existence. But you see, mankind, well, traditionally through Cain's family, they adapted a be your own God type deal, which was to take matters into your own hands. Don't allow God, right, like the New Age, don't allow God to instruct mankind on what they are to do in regards to all that, but they wanted to take upon themselves to go, which then threatened, or according to the tradition, it threatened Adam's people. And Adam's people were already advanced, and they were figuring these things out. So it seemed that mankind, through this competitiveness, through this government agendas they had, brought them into space. And that brought a controversy on them as well, and that opened the trials for them as well, which didn't lead very well because the flood destroyed everything. It was like a cosmic disaster. So what they imposed to do in regards to all that were mistakes from the past that we're repeating right now.
And that's interesting too, because from what I gather, because I read a lot of whatever ancient stuff I come across too, and apparently Cain was also worshipped as like a pope figure, like we would have today with I don't remember who's in there now. What's his name? That's from Argentina. I should be up on that. But who's ever in there now? Like, it'd be like the same idea. Like, Cain was worshipped as kind of that kind of figure.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. There was a dictator figure. Yeah. He was an antichrist model. Who Cain was. Like Cain established money, basically. He established taxes. He's actually credited as the inventor of taxes. So we all know how taxes are fun, right? We love paying taxes, don't we? Like, yeah, So we like to wring Cain's neck. So he really brought about a government of, he's like the creator of the pathfinder of all pagan religions. He established all of it. He first fancied himself as the sun god, and then his wife had a moon goddess doctrine, his kids had star god doctrines, and it all just boiled over from there. Then other Canaanite families rose up. You had Malachiel's family, you had Lamech's family, you had Ared's family, and these were Canaanites that also had doctrines. They also had beliefs, and they really instituted all of that. And all of that was inspired by Satan in various forms. Rather if he appeared as a fallen angel, as in one form or another, or he had the demonic children. The giants had ways of inspiring religions, and there's really just art forms that were created to be worshipped, and that's what that really was really all about.
Yeah, then after the flood, when you had Ham, who I refer to as the problem child, he just kind of picked up where Cain's descendants had left off.
He had to learn a hard lesson. Yeah, he had problems. I try to be nice about him, but it's we're all messed up.
So it's interesting though, and that's another thing. I look at people, you got all this stuff about racism, this, racism, that, and and I'm thinking, you know what? If you look at Noah's, his three sons, you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I'm pronouncing that correctly, they're all brothers. They had their descendants, and they all spread. Yeah, Japheth or through Europe and whatnot. So I'm thinking, really, you start to think about it. We're all distant cousins. So why is everyone making this big fuss?
Well, we have left-wing parties and other parties and European traditionalists and people who like to stay at home in their castles. Find excuses not to communicate and talk to their people. We had evolution that did a lot of damage, and we had eugenics that did that really was the damage that really caused. Then we had Hollywood with Birth of a Nation. Thanks, Hollywood. We had people that did things to divide people on the truth, that the humankind is actually related. They're all connected. Different cultures, that's true. God verifies that. But he established the cultures through those three gentlemen that you just mentioned. And they really were the forefathers of the entire human race after the flood. And so that's evident in the Bible, and it's even evident in human physiology. No matter the size of a man or the size of a woman, no matter what, if you look at their genetics, it's the same. It's just different variations.
That's
right.
I know the mountain where the ark is. I know it, and my mind just went blank. But anyway, it all stems back to that. If everybody goes back in the genealogy far enough, it all eventually goes back to that mountain. So, just now, I don't know how many people actually look that far, but it does. And, I just, I just look at all this foolishness.
It's sad why people think that. I mean, it's, I've had people try to convince. I had one guy sit me down, try to convince me that African Americans were from Mars. I had African American teachers sit me down and tell me Caucasian Americans were from Jupiter. I've had people sit me down and tell me Jewish people could have came from Neptune. I was like, what's wrong with you? Like, there's no connection. Okay, I have no connection to Neptune. I don't know African American Christians having any connection to Mars. It's like no one think. It's like that type of thinking to me is like fear. I always base that in the fact that people are afraid to face the fact that racism is a sin, and it's a shame when you consider we're related. And when people are so hardcore racist, they're usually the ones that become the most ashamed about it.
Yeah, and it's just like, it goes back to the Ten Commandments versus thou shalt not kill. Well, Jesus said if you have hate for your brother in your heart, you've already, broken that commandment. You committed murder in your heart. So, really, it's like people are professing Christians are like hating someone else because of, a whatever their race is, so it's, their word for it. And, or just even, I'll see people hate each other just because they're in a different denomination. I'm like, seriously, people? You got nothing better to do than to, worry about what church someone else goes to? It's like, I can disagree with someone doctrine-wise, but still love him as a brother or sister in Christ. But people are just so like brainwashed into, well, our church is the only church, and I see that everywhere. And I'm going, isn't that kind of like what the Nazis did too? Exclude everyone else who wasn't like you, and then they narrow it down further into smaller groups. And then even within that group, they'll narrow people out and narrow things down because they'll find fault with people within that group until you narrow down where you hardly have anybody left.
Yeah.
You start kind of eating at each other and.
Yeah, the SS policies really was about that. It was about dividing people on the basis of eugenics. Like if you had a big round brain, then they kept you in the science field. If your brain was small, probably because there's something wrong with you, and then they got to gas you. And it was really bad. I mean, everything was like skin tone. They had that skin tone thing. Do you remember seeing that? Like the ratio they had on that, man? That was sick. Even with children, they did that with children. Like if there was a child born with maybe if his eyes were different colors, like one was blue, one was brown, so like sometimes that can happen. They call it like slight A mutation. Like they would kill him at birth. Like even though everything else is working fine, like all the functions are working fine, and it's just his one eye is blue and the other is brown, so they think there's something wrong and they have to execute this young man. It's just what they did in the SS, and it was sick. They did things that people, it's just, I think that's why I became so adamant against the left, because I was seeing a lot of that in the left wing when I was over in Chicago. A lot of the similar thinking, the similar type of mentality, like when they were focusing on, on people's looks, people's attitudes, people's habits. When they started focusing completely on that and started labeling people, I said, look, you just become the Nazis. While you're telling people you're not Nazis, you're acting like them, because that's exactly what they did, and that's how they went about it.
Just different terminology. And the thing, and to say that, well, it's different, races, and, and they speak against, interracial relationships. And the thing is if they're not both human and we don't all stem from Noah, then here's the thing. Why is it then that, you can have two people from two different nationality backgrounds get married and have children? They're both fertile. Obviously they can reproduce. Whereas if you have two animals, like say like a mule, because it's a donkey and a horse that will have a baby, and so they have this mule, but the mule cannot reproduce because it's not a natural thing. It's two different species. So, but yet you have people from different racial backgrounds that will intermarry and have children, and the children can have children, which tells me that obviously it is something natural because we all stem from the same lineage in the beginning. So it's not the same as like a horse and a donkey. You know what I'm saying?
It's you just hit it on. You just hit it on the head. It's the evidence of the fact. Yeah, we share. Even though we have like different appearances, we share the same DNA structure, and that proves to you that we're all related. What's this? I have another question here from Josh about blood types. What do you think about studying videos on blood type like RH? I don't know too much about what's going on with that, with the blood type things. There's some people that have a lot of like information on that, or some sporadic thing on it. I'm not too versed on the blood type thing. Okay, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's right. I don't know a whole lot about it myself, but what I do know is that I remember my mother telling me when I was growing up that when she was pregnant with me, she had something called the Rh negative factor. I still don't fully understand what that is, but she tried to explain it to me, and she's a nurse, so she explained it the way she understood it, but I still wasn't getting it. But all I know is that something about that Rh negative factor, they told her that if she had any more children after me, that she would probably have problems. And so she had her tubes tied when I was born so that she wouldn't risk having those problems. So I grew up an only child because of it. So, but, I still don't fully understand what the issue is with it. I don't know if it's a birth defect thing they were worried about, or if she would have pregnancy complications. I don't remember, or even why it would cause issues. But I just remember her telling me that. But that's all I really understand about it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like pressing for certain people, because that's not the first question I've had about that. Maybe I should just start looking into that. That sounds kind of strange.
It is interesting.
Yeah, I was like tripping out on that. So yeah, we don't get the blood types there. I think people just Just learn to give each other a hug. You know,
Yeah,
start hugging each
but
other.
how, and
It would
nowadays
work
when you
better.
hug somebody, they think that you're insulting them. So, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like you can't win either way.
You have to try. You have to try.
Yeah. So, but yeah, but well, and it's true, and I think the hugs are helpful. I mean, I grew up where, family hugged each other. I went to camp with my best friends, and we hugged each other. I mean, they were like my second family, because we saw each other every year, and that was just our thing because we had that close friendship. But I think the one thing I've found is people that I talk to who have been sexually molested as children, they don't want to be hugged by anyone because to them it's like really invading their space, and they get real paranoid, and it freaks them out. So it's really, so I think if we want to balance it, we could say go up to someone and say, do you like hugs? And if they do, then go ahead and hug them. You know what I mean? But you
Yeah.
don't want to scare somebody.
No, you
If
don't.
they have that in their background.
Don't want to do that. We got a question from Diego. He was saying, I was wondering what your thoughts are on dispensationalism regarding different time frames in the Bible. Well, one thing I do is that I stick with the King James Version, and then I also stick with the variations of the time frames that the Bible calls, and that's a study through what's called a genealogy. And genealogy is a good way to get a time frame on right around the time when Adam was created through biblical parameters, and that can give you the understanding of, from the time the world began, from the frame when mankind fell, when they came to earth, when their time was adjusted that way, and to the time that we have now. And then what you want to do is study a lot of history and a lot of archaeology and pinning dates to accurate dates of events, and then get yourself a timetable where within that timetable you can then pin frame each event, which can give you a better understanding of a time frame, and then keep it. Don't deviate from it. Don't screw it up. Don't let people come in and write their own thing. Just get it established and just do the homework on that, and that could teach you, time frames on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm also a King James fan myself. Now, did you look at the translations after that? They keep changing wording.
Yeah,
So
they changed 136 words.
yeah,
136
and pretty
words.
soon you end up with an entirely different gospel after
Yeah,
that.
that's
Yeah.
the way it looks. Like you got it. You said it right. The
Yeah.
NIV was totally, yeah. I mean, they would remove like words like Sodom, and they would remove like dragon and replace it with rhino, and it was like, okay, that's not what it actually says. Considering you got all these bones of massive creatures that would look like dragons, if I was like back then seeing a Tyrannosaurus Rex jumping out trying to eat my herd, I mean, I'm going to say there's a big dragon on my field. Obviously it's eating my herd. Is there someone here going to do something about it? Like, it's kind of funny. Like, when I was studying theology, I had to read this chapter on dragon slayers, and this is no joke. It was a chapter called Dragon Slayers. So I'm going, yeah, this is in theology. I had to study this in seminary. There's a book on it. It's Dragon Slayers. And I'm like going, okay, what are we studying here? And it really was a study about hunters who used to hunt large lizards, dinosaurs. And I was like, oh my God, they teach this in theology? Like, don't you tell people that, in K-12 what's going on with that? Like, well, that's K-12, that's established by the Zionists, and that's approved by the federal government, by, FDA regulations, which theology is not part of. That's what I was told. And I was like, oh, so that's why you could tell me the truth and lie to everyone else? And then they're like, well, yeah.
Okay, at least they're honest.
Yeah, it's like that's how it came. Yeah. It was like, okay, let's do it then, right? But I wasn't going to do that. I mean, just tell people what you learn later on, but it just yeah, it's like there's higher forms of learning. And but it's all about if you're looking for it, because they're banking on the fact most people don't.
Exactly, and and Ken Hovind had also commented that he thought that dinosaurs were actually like a modern word for dragon, And I wondered if that was the case. I'm thinking either it's just a really overgrown lizard, or maybe it could be, except maybe it means not all of them had wings. We're just assuming all dragons have wings, and maybe that's not necessarily the case. Who knows? But it's interesting too, because you look at the first chapter of Galatians and the first chapter of Ephesians. Where Paul warns about people preaching of the gospel, or like if anybody preaches the gospel of what they've preached, whether it be a person or even an angel, let him be accursed. And then one of those two chapters where, to be aware of other gospels, people preaching of another Jesus. And so I'm thinking, well, that's interesting, because if you think of another Jesus, that means if there's more than one Jesus being preached, then that means if we're not following the word for what it really says, then we could be led away from the biblical Jesus to another Jesus, which is part of what's leading people up to the last day deceptions.
Yeah, the Jesus of the Bible is far different from Jesus in church, and I'm speaking like local denominations. It's way different, and a lot of people don't tend to understand that, but I hope one day they do, because it's very important to understand that God wants a personal relationship with people. He doesn't want you in a pew. I mean, if you want to be in a pew, that's fine. I'm not knocking people going to church. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that there's things in church that are not biblically correct, and you have to learn the parameters of that and understand that your relationship with God is personal. It's between you and him, because at the end of the day, we're family members. That's true, but God is going to be addressing you personally when he sees you. And I'd rather get there going, with a good thing of, hey, we're family. Have the blood of Jesus on you for your sins and things of this sort. It's about a personal relationship, definitely. Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, the reason why a lot of people don't see it is because, the church has started out being a very pure thing and a very good, holy thing. And, when people don't recognize how things move into the churches, and you have these different teachings that kind of creep their way in little by little over time. If they do it all at once, people won't accept it. So they do it in little stages over the years so that people don't see it for what it really is. And then before you know it, you look, decades down the line or even 100 years down the line. And, if somebody were to actually be given the privilege of doing time travel to compare the churches from the two different, like say 100 years apart, they would just go, whoa. And it's just because it's been so gradual over time, people really don't see it unless they really are seeking truth. They're just not going to see it. Right.
They overlook it. Like to look the other way. Which is not good. It's like a lot of people want things simple. I remember one thing. When I had problems with churches, is like they just tell you they want the status quo. The tranquility of the moment. They don't like things rocking it. And it's usually because they want to stay at the simple point of having milk, not enough meat, not enough courage to face the unknown, which is all described in the Bible. Your Bible should always be your guide when you have to study things that are unsettling. But we're living in times now where everything is unsettling, and everything is unraveling, and disclosure is coming, but it's not going to come in the Christian way. So people have to understand that it's only going to, the truth is only found in the Word, and the Word is going to be denied by the world. So you have to get on this now, because that's why God talks about the few being saved. It's not to say 10 or 12 are getting saved. It's just to say, if you look at the percentages of the end times in this age that you're in right now, there's very few by the numbers who are getting saved, because they don't miss the point, like you were saying. They find that avenue and they take it, whereas other people can't handle it for some reason, rather because they don't want to give up on being adulterers, or if they don't want to give up on whatever lifestyle they got going, if they're homosexuals, or if they're atheists, or if there's something if they're pagans or witches or Wiccans, something of this sort. So many people fall in love with their addictions. They fall in love with the pleasure, which doesn't mean anything. I mean, they don't quite understand what life is all about, and that it's not meant to be worshipped. And there's a way you can do things without sinning. And Ecclesiastes talks a lot about that. And it's like I don't even think they ever really want to read that. So the Bible teaches edification. it teaches moderation, and it teaches salvation. Whereas people want to either be very indulgent, like excessive, or completely in denial, and which can hurt them. And the Bible teaches something in the middle, with moderation, that it binds certain things together with a certain knowledge of life isn't about getting drunk, it's not about getting high, it's not about having sex, it's about finding out how you use the things you're given properly. Like sex is easy, that's marriage, that's children, that's finding your ideal one. Some people use it for other things and they find out that it's just not what they thought it was, because it all leads back to something else, and something they have to discover. And unfortunately, we live in a world that's really wrecked that understanding. So people have to rediscover it, and then you got other things, like people are afraid to take medication because they think they're committing witchcraft, even though their leg is broken and they're bleeding out their spleen, and then you got to force it on them because, it's things like that where it's like they miss the point in life about what the Bible's really teaching you, about being smart, like being understanding, it's about understanding, the path that God has given you, and I don't understand why people can't love one person. That sometimes doesn't compute with me, because I can't. Let's say if I'm like cheating around, you know what I mean, and you meet the two people that you're cheating with, and they're in the same room with you. Look how it feels. Look, that's unsettling. That's not cool. It doesn't feel good. When the two are face to face and your problems are out in the open, there's something wrong there, so it's like we can't do that, right? We gotta stick to what we know can work, despite how we feel, because whatever we feel, it's probably 9 times out of 10 wrong. We're human beings. We have darkness in us, there's sin in us, and we have to confront that. It's as simple as that. I tend to understand that way.
I think, too, when, people are driven to these polygamistic type of relationships, it's almost like it's something that's demonic driven, because, anybody who's in their right mind, who's thinking clearly and has a close relationship with the Lord, they don't have the thoughts of living that way. So it's almost like if they don't have that relationship with the Lord, well, then who are you submitting to if you're not submitting to God? Whether you realize it or not, you're submitting to Satan, and you're going to be driven to do a whole bunch of different things that you're really going to destroy your life in the end.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. It's totally demonically driven. Like if people, so I know a lot of guys, they got a real good wife on them, real solid wife, and I've known that from counseling. You talk to both of them, and then you talk to them separately, and you can sense that, you can see that, and then I could talk to other guys, and then they're not seeing what I can see, and I'm just, I can kind of like open their eyes to it, that there's qualities that you're not appreciating, and then the other qualities that you're not supposed to be appreciating that much is being overstepped by what she's really offering, And then I've seen that in reverse. I've seen girls have that problem with certain guys, usually over money issues. I've seen that a lot. Like there are certain women that have a problem dating a guy that's not up to par with them. He could be bona fide in some way, but he's just not there. In terms of what she can perceive. So I try to teach like humbleness, to understand that, well, if he's bona fide, if he can take care of himself, then you don't really need to provide all that. You don't really need to feel like you got to do more. It's about learning about who each other are. And then what marriage really is a partnership. It's that goal. It's that commitment for children and understanding you're going to be in a battle, in a fight. It's like the companies merging. You got two companies coming together, and they're merging now. Now we got to take our business out there, and we're going to have to fight for it and things like that. It's not about romance and things like that. It's part of it. It's part of it, but it shouldn't be the only thing, which is why most people get divorced. They get divorced because they're sexually not satisfied, and it's like that's not good enough excuse.
Or they find out there are other problems problems that they weren't counting on. And so if the romance is what they're basing it on, then these other factors come in later, and then that kills the romance because they
Yeah.
weren't looking at those things beforehand.
Yes,
So,
definitely. We got
and the
two.
thing about it
I'm
too
sorry.
is
Go
that
ahead.
if a relationship, if a marriage can be ruined, that's Satan's whole plan. Because if he can destroy your marriage, he can get to your kids.
That's correct.
And that's the whole point, to get in the middle of a marriage so that he can get to the kids, and then the kids lose their salvation.
That's correct. And then that's what leaves it so horrible about that, is that the kids get directly affected by that. And so when that happens, that becomes an absolute horrible thing. And I've seen that so many times. And a lot of the youth that you minister to, it's the same story. If you ask, why'd your parents divorce? And it's always these vain sexual issues. Mom wasn't satisfied, or the dad wasn't satisfied, or the mom came home and found the dad with the maid or the babysitter in some cases, even the daughter. I mean, one case it was a daughter that had to study. And that really was, whoa, that was crazy. They messed her up for her whole life. She got into porn sometime after that, because she was gone, man. Like, she talked about her first sexual, how it started was she talked about her first sexual experience. She was, basing that on her pain, and then that story was just like, I thought, that would be like an uncommon thing, but it turned out to be like a problem, And then I had guys who tell me honestly they were seduced by their daughter, which I find that so hard to believe sometimes, because I'm like, look, man, you're the father. Right, what's wrong with you? Like, if she's coming in the room doing things, why aren't you rebuking her? Why aren't you yelling at her? Why aren't you, get the hell out of the room? What's wrong with you? You're going to see a psychiatrist tomorrow morning. Why aren't you doing that? Like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm just trying to show her that I love her. I'm like, bro, I hate those cases, but I don't deal with that all the time. They're making excuses. You got it. That's basically it. To get the unsettling part out of the way, it's all about excuses. It really is. It's just them trying to find an excuse to do stupid things. So.
And why did Lot's daughters have to get in drunk to do what they did? Because
Yeah.
they knew what was wrong.
Exactly. They had to drug him out. You know what I mean? He didn't even remember. According to the Bible, he didn't even remember. I mean, he was so drugged out that he was blacked out. Meaning a blackout is when you lose an episode in your life and you can't remember nothing the next day. You're like, what did I do? And of course they didn't tell him. They didn't. He didn't find out till 9 months later, and we know what that produced.
Right.
Produced the Amalekites, so it was quite interesting, what's going on. But anyway, we are at our hour, so I gotta post this out. So I'm gotta end this now. So I want to say God bless you to all of you. If I didn't reach your questions, it's because I got like 60 seconds left here. So I gotta get this out there. So I'm gonna end it.
Just look up my channel. I just want to briefly say, look up my channel, The Emergency Godcasting System. And I also do a radio program here in Lewiston. You can go to www.wrbcradio.com Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time, and you can listen to me there as well.
All right. God bless you guys, and I will see you later.